Right, I am here this morning in the UK, afternoon in Australia with my good friend David Cowan, who we have had so many conversations, David, over the last few years. We're going to be talking about some really interesting subjects today, including confirmation bias and also self-limiting beliefs. But before we delve into our topic today, because it could take us all sorts of places, how are you? How are things with you, and what's happening where you are?
I'm really well, Catherine. How are you?
I'm pretty good. I would say a little bit up and down at the moment, but generally speaking, pretty good. Um,
Yeah.
Come on to the bits that aren't so good in a minute. Yeah.
Yeah, overall I'm doing well. I had a bit of a relapse in terms of not eating. I was eating. I did like a whole month without eating really any refined sugars, and and it was Mum's birthday over the weekend, and I made her pancakes, and I went a bit overboard with them myself. And the next day, I couldn't sleep that night, and the next day I just felt like I had a sugar hangover. I had like this bit lethargic, kind of just slower clock speed, and it really just confirmed for me how bad sugar is. And because when you're eating it every other day or even sometimes every day, you don't even notice it. Like, you don't notice how bad it is because it's this constant. It's just how things are. But when you have a really big break, like a good few weeks or a month, like I did, it just you know why you shouldn't do it anymore. You know why you shouldn't consume it because it's so bad, and it's not just the after effects that you can feel. It's all the stuff that it's doing to your mitochondria and all the other stuff
Yeah.
that you don't really know of. And there was that video, that guy I told you about who's on YouTube who does all these food challenges, and and he had this health problem. And they always say that you can't out-train a bad diet. And in some ways, yeah, you might be able to out-train the bad diet in terms of keeping the calories off, but there's all the other damage that you're doing to yourself that you can't get rid of. No matter how much you train, you just can't. So that we were going to talk about health and stuff later in the chat. So I think yeah, it's maybe we should talk about it now. But it's
Mm.
yeah, it just I don't know. It's there's no surprise that it's almost in everything that we eat. Everything that's processed is just loaded with sugar.
And when I went to America, every time I go to America, this is the thing, is our bodies get used to things. And I've had two talks now with the amazing Yvette Rose. They're on my channel. If people haven't watched that, I really recommend you watch them, because she's a real expert in metaphysical anatomy. And, everything is linked. And we talk in this community, we talk a lot about brainwashing. And I think everyone who's watching this is aware that we're all brainwashed to greater or lesser extents. And we're sort of becoming more aware of that day by day. But it's the easiest way is to keep us being able to be brainwashed, is to feed ourselves with sugar, with poisons, with chemicals, from the air, from the water, from the food, with let alone what's going in with this. Because there's so many studies now that show that your microbiome, those microbes, which we mainly call bacteria, but it's other things as well, but let's keep it simply and say it's the bacteria in our gut, that they're completely related to Alzheimer's, Parkinson's,
Mm.
dementia, attention deficit disorder, autism, you name it, every depression. It's just so important in terms of what we put into our body, and some of that we can control and some of it we have less control over. But I'm so with you, because literally given up alcohol for a couple of months now, and not because I had an alcohol problem, but I thought, yeah, it's so full of sugar, let me see how I feel. And again, it's the level of clarity goes up to another level. And yes, I've had the occasional things when I've gone on special occasions, but you're right, your body can feel it, your mind can feel it. And if all of us are looking to try and make these changes in the world, if we're trying to do it when our physical vessel is suffering so much, there's not enough energy left to address to all these other issues.
Yeah. It's interesting you mentioned alcohol because I haven't drunk anything for over 4 years now, and even in the lead up to that 4 year mark, I was barely drinking at all anyway. But it takes if you get really drunk, it takes a good 2 to 3 days, sometimes half a week or something, for you to get back to normal, your brain to be kind of normal, optimal operation, or optimized. And by then, if you drink every weekend, in 2 days' time, it's time to do it again. So you're almost never going to be operating optimally, are you? If you're always drinking every weekend, and it's no wonder why I didn't really achieve anything, for the entire time until I stopped, really.
And it's so addictive. Sugar's more addictive than cocaine, as you know. And I think, it leads into what we want to talk about, why there's so much, how it affects our beliefs, our self-limiting beliefs, and also why we find it so difficult as humans to actually now have proper conversations where we can open our minds up to perhaps there are different perspectives, perhaps there are different ways of looking at things. It's all very well sort of saying glibly, we know we've been lied to all this time, but are we lying to ourselves by the daily choices we're making? It's a good question. We can't keep blaming everyone and everything outside of ourselves. Yes, I'm not saying it's not hard. I was listening to one of my friends who's a real health guru in America, and he was talking about getting all his food from the local farmers market where you can get organic stuff and it's all fresh from the farms. And I was thinking, well, we can't get that here. There's not that many farmers markets in the UK. Yes, there are some, but a lot of the farmers markets near me, it's not locally produced organic food at all. It's still coming from a lot of the same hubs up in London where it's all, my local farmer's farm shop to where I am sells battery eggs, and all the salad stuff and everything is heavily sprayed with pesticides. So it's not an even playing field for people. I'm not pretending it's easy, but actually we've got to start looking at to why we're also set in these belief systems and why we find it so difficult to open our minds up to different ways of thinking, because we're going around in circles a lot. Do you think?
Yeah, it's funny you sent me that video just before we jumped on, because I was just thinking about that at lunch. I've had lots of conversations with people over the years, and it seems as though that even just the mention of something that doesn't agree, that somebody's belief system doesn't agree with, it doesn't even matter like what it is. Not everybody does this. It might cause some friction, within them, but a lot of people just completely shut it down and say it's not true straight away. That's not true. That's not true. Or they get really angry about it, And I think one of the hardest things, I've been watching a lot of health videos about different foods and things, and I just found out that two of my favorite things in the world are really high in oxalates, which is peanuts and chocolate. And so it's not that I eat them every day, but I used to. But I think diet's one of those things that if you've been doing something for so long, because you're so invested in the diet, whatever it is, if someone comes along with some information that might be beneficial to you, but conflicts with your belief system about what you've been putting in your body for the last 5 decades or whatever, then naturally that's going to cause some sort of problem, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think I was listening to a really interesting, when we decided we were going to talk about this, I was listening to some other people's opinions on it. And I heard Tony Robbins do a little short on it. And it doesn't matter what you think of Tony Robbins, that's not the point. But he had a really good point where he said beliefs create and beliefs destroy, because so many people think their beliefs are real, but they're not.
Right.
Just you've got some belief on something doesn't make it true, doesn't make it right or wrong. It might make it true to you, but it doesn't make it true. David and I are really good friends. I'm sure there's lots of things that we've got different belief systems on. And it can be, anyone who follows Bruce Lipton's work, The Biology of Belief, the thing is your beliefs will, scientifically proven, change your physiology. They'll change your chance of getting and developing certain diseases. They'll change your likelihood of recovering from certain things. Our beliefs are so powerful. They change everything right down to a cellular level. Not only do they change it because of the choices we make in life based on our beliefs, but equally they cause energetic and physiological changes which can change the whole direction of our lives for good or worse. So I think when people really start to look into understanding how you can be aware of your beliefs, and are they serving you, and are they serving the greater society? So being less attached to them is really, really important. I mean, I've got really strong beliefs about certain things, but I'm really having to ask myself now, not only how much do they serve me, but how much do they serve the animals that I'm trying to look after? How much do they serve my children? You know, the wider society that I'm looking at. And if we're not able to question our beliefs, then there's a problem there.
Yeah, I think, yes, funny. It's like you've been reading my mind almost, because yesterday I was thinking about this. I was like, in life, you really need to be comfortable with the fact that your belief system could change at any moment, at any given moment, or could be challenged, first of all, and then changed. But one thing that really pisses me off, which is something that happens often when you're speaking with certain people, is that, you know, certain health problems are genetic, or, you know, they run in the family, or these things happen because you're old, you know, and yeah, it can definitely be said that when you reach a certain age, or as you get older, you have more health problems. That's absolutely true in the society that we live in. But then one thing that really stood out to me is, if you look at the physical body, you know, I go to the gym and I see all these like older people in the gym, maybe 70, 80 years old, and they're all like old and frail and stuff, right? But then you see the odd person online who's 70, you know, 80 years old, and they're fit, like you would think that they were 30 something because of their body. You're just looking at their body. And it got me thinking about health problems, and if training your body is one way to keep you healthy, right? Then to me, like maybe not all of them, but a good portion of health problems are just they just manifest because, well, maybe it's a belief system, but it's also a lifetime of neglect in many ways, isn't it? Because, you know, you haven't, in the same way that you don't train, you don't work out or whatever, when you get to that age, your muscles just deteriorate.
Yeah.
But if you don't, and it's difficult because we don't have all the information that we need to have a healthy body. We just don't. We haven't been given it, you know, like, and there's so much to know. But if you don't at least seek that information out and do your best to kind of improve every year or whatever, or every month or whatever it is, you know, whatever speed that you want to improve at, then of course you're going to get to the point where, yeah, you're older and you're deficient in all these minerals or whatever, and it's caught up with you.
It's so true. And I think also, you know, there's so many, I think social media has really caused a lot of, you know, damage. Beliefs and confirmation bias. Let's bring in the confirmation bias as well. So confirmation bias is basically where you seek out information to back up your belief systems. So the easy example, we've all heard of it. You get a new red Audi and you think it's quite a rare car. And then once you've got your red Audi, you see red Audis everywhere because there's something in your mind that seeks out something that's familiar, something that you've decided is good for whatever area of that life you might be. And, you know, as humans, we are tribal. You know, we whatever our history is, I mean, that's all up for debate now, isn't it? But, you know, there's something about our society where we do seek to confirm things that have served us, belief systems that have served us for a while. But the trouble is since the age of technology and computers, the brainwashing is so easy now because every time you search something in, I mean, everyone knows now, you know, I don't even understand how they do it, but I can search for something online on my computer, and then suddenly I've got ads on every single app for that thing within minutes of it. Even if you're having conversations, we all know that happening. So what's happening is they're using this technology, and I'm saying they as in not judging who or why for that, because we all are trying to sell something. Anyone who's working is either selling a service or a product or anything. But of course, technology is speeding that up. So it's feeding us confirmation bias all the time, which is then impacting and sort of strengthening us, digging into our belief side of things and making us less able to have these open conversations and sort of say, what if? And I'm noticing, I heard Wayne Dyer say years and years ago, you know, people will spend all day looking for something to be offended about. And I 100% see that all the time. So, you know, let's make it personal. Say I do a video with someone and someone's decided that one thing they've said is wrong, then there's this shaming. Then they'll shame me for talking to that person who said one thing that the listeners' belief systems disagree with. And that's not moving the world forward in anything. It's just basically that person who's then criticizing and shaming me, shaming the person because they've got a different belief. It's like literally they're then inflicting their rage and virtue on someone else just because someone else has got, well, not even necessarily a different belief system, because a lot of these conversations that are happening, people are having them to question their belief systems. But you're not even allowed to do that now. So on both sides of the story, in this ridiculous truther community, self-righteousness and virtue is just horrific to see in action, in my opinion, David, because all the things we're criticizing the other side for censoring, people are doing it worse. You've only got to look at the comments on social media when someone dares to even have a conversation that they disagree with. It's so ludicrous. I don't know how we get out of this trap.
Yeah, I think a little bit of introspection goes a long way, because
yes,
we don't just stop being so triggered all the time, you know. Like people are so easily triggered, and it's really funny is back when it was all the stuff was going on a few years ago, and I was posting a lot on Facebook, I put out this post, and it was the TGA's figures based on the number of people that had adverse reactions and also deaths after the thing, right? And I put out this infographic, and it had the government symbol at the bottom of it because it was from the government website. And this person commented on the post, is like, why'd you have to include the government logo on it? And I was like, because they're the official government figures. Like this, we went back and forth, yeah. But the end result was these are the official government figures. What logo would you do you think I should have used? and I think at that point he just is like, I've lost this one. But people, it just goes back to the whole belief system, doesn't it? I mean, it's like you don't, just because, I just don't understand. It's a real mindfuck, you know?
Yeah, it is.
It really is. It's a real mindfuck, because your belief system, or anybody's belief system, is so convoluted, I think, in many ways, that we're very quick to contradict ourselves at times too, you know, just because we're just looking for anything to back up what we believe in that moment. And then we may just go and contradict ourselves based on, you know what I mean? Based on another thing that we've just said that may not make sense.
It just makes so much sense. And we're all laughing at the politicians doing it and the people on the public stage doing it. But it's that lack, as you said, of the introspection. And when David and I are talking about this, we're not pretending we don't do it, by the way. We're having a
That's why I said we, yeah.
This is why we want to have the conversation, because as you say, every single belief is up for grabs. But, you know, for example, as a vegan, it's hysterical how many, I'm nearly 56. I've never felt more healthy in my life. You know, a lot of problems that I've had in the past have gone away, touch wood. I'm not having any hormonal problems. Doesn't mean I won't, because I'll make different choices today than I will. But there's so many people that tell me, I was at a barbecue at the weekend, and I sat there, and a whole load of people saying, oh yeah, I was a vegan for 3 months and I lost all my muscle. And I was like, well, I haven't lost all my muscle, you know. And it's like this self-confirming, instead of saying, oh, good for you, if you've got reasons to do that, you go, girl, you know, it doesn't matter. I didn't even raise the subject. because people raise different things.
Yeah.
I don't care what people eat. You know, you've got to decide for yourself. This is the whole point. And you would hope, as we go through different stages of our life, that you change. I mean, I say it all the time. I do so much stuff on animal health, and every single day I'm learning new things, and every single day that will change my view on things, because things change. Nothing stays static in life, nothing. And so being able to have people question your beliefs in a polite and respectful way, where they're truly looking to listen, rather than have someone enforce their beliefs. So if you've tried being vegan for 3 months and it didn't work for you, then fine. You know, I'm not even going to bother asking you, because it's not my job to try and convince you. But don't try and pretend it's not working for me when it blatantly is at the moment. Now, if I choose to do something different because situations choose moving forward, I'll make that decision then. But it's just an example of how people are so desperate to have people agree with their opinion. It's another form of flying monkeys and gaslighting, where if people agree with you, it makes you feel more secure about yourself. And actually, if you know in your heart that you know, you're really listening to yourself, like you with the sugar, your body gave you instant feedback. And the more you respect your mind and your body, the more you will get that feedback, which will be in your best interest. But when we cover up everything, which is really, really easy for us to do, particularly in modern society, because it's so easy. We've got these wrong choices being dangled in front of us as a carrot all the time. So no wonder it's really hard for people, because you've got to have a lot of willpower to say stick to the things that you've been doing with your diet.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And the crap thing is about when you have a relapse like that, it makes more relapses just so much easier, doesn't it? So I was at the supermarket a couple of days later. I think it was the day after, actually. So I was already feeling crap. I was at the supermarket buying some coconut oil, and I happened to walk down the chocolate aisle, and because I'd already ruined it, I just bought more chocolate. Whereas ordinarily, I wouldn't have even gone down the chocolate aisle. I was like, no, I'm just not. I just don't go down there anymore. But I did. So I bought 2 blocks, and I bought something else, and I didn't finish it more than that day. But it just sets you up for almost a whole week of eating crap, and it's very easy. It's like a slippery slope, and it's just so much easier, in my opinion, to go cold turkey. Because if you try to wean yourself off whatever it is, or if you try to minimize, you're gonna just set yourself up for failure. And it kind of I think this is a good segue into what we were talking about, what we originally planned to talk about, which is one of the things we planned, which was if you're not going forwards, you're going backwards. And in my opinion, like, it's so much. I love the phrase consistency beats intensity every time.
Yeah.
But that can be a double-edged sword at times, because if you're consistently, you know, doing something bad for you, bad for yourself, then you're going to be in a real bad place.
Yeah, it's such a good point, this. If you're not going forward, you're going backward. I mean, it's so true. The only consistent thing in life is change. And it's like, how much you want it. And like, let's take an example that, again, is in everyone's lips at the moment: the Sound of Freedom movement, that isn't out in your country, in Australia or the UK at the moment, but so many of us have heard of it. We're getting so much feedback from people that are watching it and everything. And it's like, when something comes into your awareness, even if you've known about this for a long time, it's like, what is it going to change? What if you walk out of that? I heard, I can't even remember whether it was Tim Ballard or Jim Caviezel saying, and I don't care about the individuals of those. It's like, you know, trying to just pick holes in people, which we're seeing a lot at this moment. It doesn't matter when you see something that is really earth-shattering. To me, the only thing that matters is, has that inspired you to do something different, to make a different choice, to change one of your belief systems? You know, so a classic example of that is, it does take one person to change the world. If if we're not leaving it to everyone else, so anyone who's even that's in their awareness, whether it's in your country or not, now that you know about this, what are we all, each of us, about as individuals going to do about the child trafficking issue? You know, what change in behavior, what change in belief, you know, sitting there and making the focus on how amazing this person is or not. Well, thank God people like that are getting up and doing something. You know, this is what we see, is it's the people that have really put their neck on the line when it comes to the medication issues like this. We've seen for years the amount of careers that have been ruined by people just trying to warn people that there are dangers about it so people can make an informed choice, not trying to ban them, not trying to do this, just saying, look, you need to know this information. And I would reach out to every single person watching this today. What are each and every one of us going to do differently from this day forward? You know, if we've all had a belief that we can't make a difference, well, how are we going to work on that and change it? Because you can make a difference. It's like me with my rescue animals. It's overwhelming, the people that work with rescue animals. I mean, it's just overwhelming. You're just thinking the problem is just continual, like the child trafficking. But actually, every one animal you take into your home, or you care, or you sponsor for, you've made a difference to that one animal. And that is enough to get the ball rolling. Don't concentrate on what you can't do. What can you do? So time for a quick break and a word from this show's sponsor. So I'm here with my friend Jay from Spiritually Raw. Jay, everyone's talking about Asea redox signaling molecules. Why is it important? What do people need to know?
So what happens is a company called Asea created this redox molecule, and to put it in perspective, imagine being born in this lifetime with one tank of gas, okay? It's this redox, okay? And what happens is when you hit puberty, that tank of gas now starts to go down, down, down. This tank of gas is also the same thing, if you would, that signals the cells inside of you, outside of you, and lets the body know where there's a crisis. So as we age, that signaling gets lower and lower and lower and weaker and weaker and weaker. So the weaker it is, the immune system can't find out where to be able to help you when there is a crisis or when there's an issue. This really, for a lot of us, appears to be the human breakthrough that we've all been waiting for, is something that would let the cells know when there's a problem. So now what we've been finding out, a lot of us call it the med bed in a bottle, the elixir of the gods. I mean, we have so many different terms for it. But now what we're finding out happens when you take this, you ingest this, if you would, the Asea redox, it's going to now start to amplify that signaling to the cell. So wherever the body feels like you may be having a crisis or something that's not where it needs to be, it's going to now have a better chance for that immune system to go to work. Okay. So this is you drink. Okay, this is you drink this on the outside. This is the topical version of it. The difference between these two is, one, you drink, it's going to go wherever the body feels like it needs it inside. And you may not always know that unless you walk around with an x-ray machine, but it's doing its job. This one, it's about twice as strong. It's highly concentrated. You can rub it specifically on the area that you feel like may cause you discomfort, and it's going to go to work right away. One thing with Asea that I want to tell people that, because I know a lot of people try a lot of products and you have to ride it out a little bit. This is the thing that'll make you a believer. You literally rub this on the area of discomfort 3 times in 5 minutes and wait for it. Wait for about 10 minutes afterwards. So rate your discomfort level on a scale of 1 to 10. And then about 10 minutes later, after you put this on 3 times in 5 minutes, rate that discomfort level again. See how you feel. This is designed to make you a believer, to know that, okay, you're on the right track with this redox technology. So with redox, I believe this, my personal opinion on this is, I believe it helps everything else work, because it is the delivery system that makes all the other things work, because there's a lot of amazing nutrients and supplements out there. But the reality is they're only as good as their ability to get at a cellular level. This is really going to help drive that home. So if you're not at optimum performance, you're not what we always say, which is we're 20, 30 years younger. You've seen a lot of these videos already. Then you probably should be texting that number in the description below to find out more about this. And we'll be happy to send you more information.
Absolutely fantastic. So if you want to be powered by redox, the number and the contact details, how to get help, is all below. Thank you.
Yeah. Change always starts with you, doesn't it? I mean, if you don't first change yourself, then you can't like, I love that quote, be the change you want to see in the world. There are people, a lot of people, it's similar to like raising consciousness, really. You know, you raise yours, and the flow and effect, like no matter what you do in life, if it's changing your life or getting healthier or rescuing animals or doing something, somewhere along the line, you're going to inspire somebody else to do the same thing, or perhaps something similar. And then it's a flow and effect. So, you know, it doesn't really matter if other people aren't doing it now, as long as you're doing whatever it is that you want to do, then, you know, maybe you inspire someone else. Like, there's a guy I saw at the beach around Christmas time, and we used to work together at the pizza shop. And I spoke to him yesterday for the first time in almost 6 months, and he goes, "Oh man, it was really good to see you. You inspired me to go to the gym, and I got scammed by this gym, but on the plus side, I lost 10 kilos and I'm at like 12% body fat, and I gained 2 kilos of muscle."
Oh.
And so he got scammed by this scam gym in my city, but he said he would have gotten really angry if he hadn't got, you know, great results. But it's just, and there have been many times where I've inspired someone to eat healthier. I used to work in the car industry, and everybody eats like crap there. And I literally started a wave of people like looking after their diet and their health and everything in the workplace. Not because I wanted to, but just because I was eating what I eat. You know, and this has happened in multiple workplaces. So you will, I think, just by doing the thing that you want, like or what you believe to be good for you, you'll naturally inspire other people.
It's so true, because, you know, as it comes back to what you were saying, you're either moving forward and you're either moving backward. And the only one you can actually really influence is yourself. And just understanding and having that awareness of where your beliefs are holding you back and where they're moving you forward, and constantly looking and questioning that. I mean, I've had to question a lot of my belief systems recently, and I still, you know, I mean, that's not going to ever end. I'm going to constantly become aware of more and more things. And personally, I'm really happy if someone genuinely, from the right place, you know, can have a civil conversation and point out certain beliefs with you and sort of, you know, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? It's completely different, David, don't you think, to shaming? This language of shaming just shuts people down and makes them hold on to their beliefs more. Whilst if you can genuinely open up a conversation and saying, oh, you know, I'm really interested to find out what do you think about this, or have you tried this? Because no one's perfect. No one's got every area of their life sorted. I mean, there's just not a single person or animal that would have that. Everyone's always got steps forward they want to make in some area of their life.
Yeah, yeah. But I also wanted to touch on also just like the comfort zone. And even if you are like actively working on something, like I told you before we jumped on, I've been working out for over 20 years now. But what I realized, and it took me ages to realize this, was that even though I was actively working my muscles and stuff, I was getting weaker. Like, I was just in my comfort zone. I was getting weaker year on year. And it got to the point where only recently, where I saw this guy on YouTube, and he's a powerlifter. He's a professional powerlifter, but he's not one of those powerlifters that is enormous. He's like probably about 5'10", and he's like really lean, and he's just super strong. And it inspired me to lift heavier weights. And what I realized was that I'd placed a limit on what I thought I could lift. And it wasn't until I actually challenged that did I realize that I could lift far more than I thought, you know. And because I was in this comfort zone where even though I was training every week, I wasn't getting any stronger, and I'd probably lost some muscle mass too. So it really goes to show, like, you really have to be actively working toward, like, actively going forwards rather than just maintaining. Because I think if you just maintain, you're never going to get anywhere, you know. Like, I'm going backwards, even though I was actively working out. And as you get older, like I just found out, I just turned 40, and as you every year that goes by that you turn after 40, you lose a certain percentage of strength, speed, muscle mass. So if anything, I'm going to have to train doubly as hard if I want to get stronger, aren't I? Because doing the training that I was doing before, I wasn't getting any better. You know, I have to at least train harder to get stronger, or to maintain that, or train even harder if I want to get stronger and faster, don't I? Because I wasn't doing it before. So it's going to get harder, but you have to train. You know, I'm not just talking about weights here, but it doesn't matter what it is. If it's your knowledge, if it's your skill set, like if you don't actively get better, even just 1% per day, that can add up a lot.
And different things. I was speaking to a friend yesterday, and I was thinking, gosh, you know, years ago, but when I sort of started this awakening journey, I can't remember his name. I think it's Otto Gnomes or something. He was an amazing movement specialist, and moving functional movements, so moving like an animal, crawling, training, things like this. And what it makes you realize is, like, if you watch any animal in nature move, if you watch someone who's living out of civilization, it's never the same every day. You know, they don't, you know, they'll climb a different tree that day, or they'll have to run for a different distance, or they'll have to climb a different hill, or you know, you chop wood today and then you're gardening that day. So it's this variety of using your body in different ways, and that goes with our mind. If we're constantly doing the same thing every day, you're going to get the same results, or less, as you say, because this consistency thing can make you go backwards. So consistency can also be looking to mix it up as well, and sort of saying, you know, I'm a human. If you are, if anyone's watching this, you know, I'm a human. How are humans designed to move? What are some of the natural activities? Look at this amazing resurgence in gardening. You know, I can remember my grandparents, my grandmother was still doing her own garden completely agilely and everything, and scrubbing her own foods to 92, because they were used to using their body to do things that were adding to all aspects of their life. So there's just some examples. But if each and every one of us, I would say, if we're less prioritizing how to just get our opinions across and our belief systems to be incorporated, and if we're opening up to the conversation about what if, you know, why are certain people's beliefs like this, you know, how could we try and, you know, have a civil discussion about a different point of view? Imagine the difference we could make. Because when you just go in that confrontational way, human nature is you're just going to get resistance. You're just going to build resistance, and not good resistance. You know, you're just going to put people's walls up. It's going to turn into a conflict. And what have you actually achieved by that? You know, nothing but shut people down more.
Yeah. I think the last few years has been very challenging for all of us and people watching this video, just because of the fact that we've become aware of how things in the real world work. And there's nothing that we want to do more than let people know what we've just discovered. But and I've definitely been guilty of this, but it's very difficult not to kind of, and multiple people have said this to me, is like, do you think you can, like, if I put something out on Facebook, perhaps, you know, do you think you can do it in a nicer way? Like, and I was like, well, how do you want me to sugarcoat it? I mean, how do you portray that message, that knowing what we know, in a way that people are going to take it on board, you know? And it's very challenging. And I think we've all experienced that, especially with family members or friends, where we try to tell them about something, and of course it shut them down, because nobody wants to know the truth, really, do they? So
such a good point. And I want to hear the listeners' views about what we do about this, because it's so hard. It's like, you know, that's why you're not allowed to talk about child trafficking or what goes on in a slaughterhouse, because people don't want to know it. And do they not want to know it because they don't feel empowered to do anything about it? Or do they not want to know about it because selfishly it would involve them changing one of their belief systems? So let's take
both, I think.
Slaughterhouses for an example. You know, the whole point is there, you can make a difference, because every single pound you choose what food you're buying is either feeding that industry or moving one step forward to close it down. You know, when we go out in society we notice things and we, you know, say to someone, are you all right? Whether it's a child or an adult, are you okay? You know, can I do anything to help? You know, you're going to open up a completely different energy to it, because what's the point of telling someone, you know, they're saying, you know, there's no point closing the stable door after the horse is bolted. It's like, I can remember my dad once saying, he was on the train going up to London and he had his coffee on the little table in the train, and the train went round over a bumpy bit or something. The coffee spilled all over his suit, and the woman opposite said to him, I could see that was going to happen. He said, well, I wish you'd told me. I could have held on to the coffee cup. There's not much point. And that's a bit like, you know, saying we can see what's going to happen with certain medical information interventions. You know, there's no point telling someone after their dog's run off that there's deer over there. If I'm out on a dog walk, you know, I've got dogs that will chase deer. If I see another dog walker coming, I'll say, I've just seen a deer over there. Because pre-warned, they can then put their dog on the lead and possibly save the deer and save their dog getting run over. But if I don't say anything, I'm not opening up that choice. But then it's not my decision whether that person puts the dog on the lead. That dog might be better trained than mine. It might not chase deer. It might be old. It might be fine with deer. You know, my Labradors never chase deer. So this is what I mean. It's like, not, as you said very right at the beginning of this, if we take communication, we can't expect people not to take offense at what we're saying if we're taking offense at everything they're saying. How can we change our communication styles so that we're open to feedback? Because people aren't going to want our feedback if we won't take it. It's, you know, it has to start with us, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think, you know, it's funny. I think as you kind of go along your journey, if you're into personal growth and expanding your consciousness and stuff, to a degree, and this might just be me, but I'm going to guess that it's not. To a degree, we automatically assume that just because we're expanding our awareness and stuff, that our point is more true than the other person's, even though we used to once think like that, you know? So, and in many cases, maybe that is true. But I'm sure it's not in some state, you know, in some cases. So it can be very frustrating when you're speaking to someone and they're speaking from a point of view of where you used to be maybe 5 years ago or whatever, and you've got a new point of view, and you do get frustrated at what they're saying, even though, you know, you're bringing a different level of awareness. I think it can go both ways, but I think we do really need to kind of just have that, rather than shut them down and say that they're wrong, even though they may be. I think it would still do everybody, you know, would benefit everybody if we were able to have those intelligent conversations and actually have a proper conversation. But then invariably, you will probably say something that puts them in checkmate, and then they'll get pissed off.
Yeah, well, you know, it's such an interesting dilemma that we're all facing at the moment. And you know, we can all take responsibility for how we respond to things. We can't take responsibility for everyone else's actions, but we can take responsibility for how we respond. And you know, politeness costs nothing. You know, even if you're outraged by something someone said and not, to go into shaming mentality and things like this, it's like, what are you just trying to prove your point and make yourself feel better, or are you actually trying to make a change in the world? And honestly, when you asked me at the beginning, how am I, the reason I was like up and down is it's like, it's weird. I don't know whether it's my age. I don't know if it's what I've been working on. I don't know if it's the amazing people I've been surrounding myself, but something has fundamentally shifted in me over the last 3 years, where I'm just so much more open to questioning everything, but not questioning everything with a mindset of what can I look, what's wrong with this? You know, when I heard Wayne Dyer first say this, people spend all day looking for something to be offended about. I realized that was me. I was going into conversations sometimes with people that I had history with, you know, looking for something to be offended about, where I could say, oh, but, and the moment that penny dropped with me, that everything changed. And I'm not saying I've got it perfectly right, you know, particularly with my husband. So, you know, with those ones that are closest to you, you've known each other for a long while. It's interesting. Whilst if you're meeting someone for the first time, it's much easier perhaps to be open because you've not got so many preconceived ideas about that person. But when we realize that everyone has got different knowledge available to them, that could be intellectual knowledge, it could be life experiences, it could be the knowledge that your microbiome's feeding to you right there, right then, based on what you ate and drunk this morning, or what air you've breathed in. It could be emotional knowledge based on who you've listened to this morning, whether you've listened to something that's uplifted you or down. There's so many different determining factors that are going into every single person's decision. I'm just very much interested now in saying, how can we change things? How can we stop this division, this conflict on both sides? I mean, when I hear Robert Kennedy speaking at the moment, I'm in awe. One, because he's so hot. I had to be joking, but no, but because when I can hear how someone can articulate things in such a great way, and I think, I'm not pretending he's perfect, I'm not putting him on a pedestal, but when you've really done your research, when you've really lived life, when you've been through these ups and downs, this is why in most communities, whether it's animal or human, elders are respected, because we learn through going through life. And you wouldn't expect, you know, if I see a herd of horses, they treat the elderly ones up until the stage where they become a danger to the herd, and then they're a bit done for, but they treat them in a very different way to how they treat the young foals. They're much more stern in the feedback to the young foals, because they know they're teaching them certain skills. The elders, one of my old cats, she never lifted a paw to anything, but she would just give some of the other cats a look and they immediately stopped it. You know, this is what I mean, is it's respecting that everyone's at a different stage of their life and different life lessons, and looking at it, how about if we looked at it and said, what can I learn from this? And sometimes you're learning what you don't want to do. That's just as important as learning what you do. But if we change that mindset to how we're looking at everyone, it's got to be a better way, because what's blatantly obvious is we're just all bashing heads on every possible. And that's why they're pushing ahead with all these gender reforms. The sex education in the schools is horrific. It's horrific. But we're so busy arguing about this other stuff that all these horrendous agendas are being introduced, and we're not putting our attention where it should be. That's my 2 pennies worth.
Yeah. First of all, I love RFK. I think he's the kind of he's like what I would think every politician should be like, if that makes sense. You know, like, we need someone diplomatic. We need people that it's not someone. We need people that are diplomatic. The problem is, you see all the politicians, and I think he's definitely got a few points up on Trump for sure, in many ways.
Yeah.
And yeah, but it's interesting, because I'm not into politics. I've been paying a lot of attention to it over the last few years, but just based on what I've heard, yeah, I mean, if he seems sincere too, I mean, I guess time will tell, but yeah, he definitely seems sincere. Wait, what was that? What did you say before? Just the last bit that you. The very last thing you said.
It's the very last thing I said.
Oh, with all the agenda, yeah. There's a lot of. It's really hard to say. I went to a rally a couple of weeks ago, and the main thing they were talking about at the rally was all the gender stuff and the grooming and stuff that's going on in the schools here.
Yeah.
And I would imagine that it's happening in almost every country, just on different levels. And I was talking to a friend who lives overseas, and I said, and this kind of came up, and I kind of said, he's got young kids, and I said, I didn't say you have to, but I said, you might want to look at what they're learning in school, just keep an eye on it, just in case, because there's all this stuff going on. And I tried to give him lots of different examples and things. And he was like, no, it's just about like the drag story hour. And he's like, oh, that's just a bit of fun, isn't it? I mean, it's like, no, I don't think drag queens belong anywhere near kids. You know what the weird thing is that there's a bar here that kind of just opened, and it's in the middle of a normal kind of public area, right? Where you have restaurants and stuff like that. And they have like topless men and women in kind of like, you know, lingerie and stuff. And the opening few sentences were talking about how it may make families' stomachs turn or whatever. I don't think it was overly sexual or anything. But then at the same time, I bet you anything that this same newspaper would be openly promoting things like Drag Story Hour.
Yeah.
You know, and it's just so weird. Like I mean, we know why they're doing it, but isn't it? Don't you find it funny that they're so blind to one thing, but you know, it's just so normalized. We've normalized everything wrong about us. You know, everything, like we've normalized obesity, we've normalized drag queens now in schools, we've normalized all these different things. That ill health, I mean, everybody's unhealthy now, you know.
Absolutely.
And that's it's very normal. It's extremely normal.
In
I mean, what the hell?
1 in every 1.6 dog in America will get cancer now, or has got cancer. I mean, this is a state we've got. And you're right, we've normalized everything. And also, the thing is, throughout time, so I used to watch, when I was growing up, I used to watch my parents' Carry On films, Benny Hill, Kenny Everett, all these people that you'd never be allowed to see now because they're politically incorrect. But it was completely normal that at certain ages, you know, my parents would laugh at jokes that we didn't laugh at as children because we didn't get them. And that's the way things should be. Children shouldn't get sexual jokes. There's a fine line between literally educating and making children enough aware to be able to say no to dangerous situations. And I don't envy, you know, I'm a parent, you know, it's a really fine line because my children deal with things very, very differently. And so when they were growing up, telling them about dangers, how one of them would respond would be very different to another. So it's not an easy subject. I'm not pretending there's a black and white decision there, but this is why teachers are so well trained. And most people that go into the teaching profession are passionate because they understand how influential young children are and what a responsibility it is. And the fact that so many of them are not now saying no to these agendas is just another example of how people feel disempowered. Because, you know, if you're a teacher and you can't stand up and say no, then God help us all, literally. Just like the doctors who should say no, just like the policemen should say no to brutalities, just like the parents have a responsibility to know what your children are being taught. You can't outsource this now, because if there's any inkling, if you've got someone that's good enough like you to have that conversation with a parent, then the parent would like, oh my God, I'd better go and ask the question. Now, they might have had, you know, of course, if they weren't aware of all this, they wouldn't have thought to ask the question. But that's what a good citizen does, is they make people aware of things that could be in their best interest. And if someone's been good enough to do that, then at least go and investigate it. At least go and ask, hang on a minute, what is going on here? Let me just check that this does feel okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's really scary, and it just comes down to also, it's like we self-police ourselves, don't we? You know, David Icke says we're like in the Matrix, you know, everybody's an agent, and it's just the same as that. You know, you don't want to rock the boat, and you don't want to, you know, speak up if you're, you know, I mean, look at all that. I mean, I don't know what's happened in the UK, but here, they said that if you're a doctor and you administered the thing, then you wouldn't have any problems with being sued or anything. But now they've backflipped on that, which is no surprise at all. And I mean, even if they hadn't, like, don't you think that the mere fact that APRA, which is the governing body here for the doctors and stuff, don't you think that APRA basically said you can't badmouth the thing, and you have to give informed consent. So if you don't give informed consent, then you can be sued. But you can't badmouth it, so you can't do either. Because if you give informed consent, you're going to be badmouthing it by proxy, aren't you?
This is the problem. And I think, at the end of the day, we have to hold our hands up when we've been hoodwinked. Once you're an adult, it's different, completely different for children. They shouldn't know all this stuff. There should be an innocence of that. And it's so important to sort of maintain a world where they can learn this stuff appropriately. There's a reason why people go through puberty, when their bodies change, then it's a different stage of their life, and as you get older, it changes again. You go for menopause and it's a different stage. There's, nature has these stages for amazing, but it's not just for the physical evolution, it's for the emotional, the mental, the knowledge side of things. We're meant to know and do things differently at different stages of our lives. That's the way biology works. And I think, everyone's so quick to burn, but how many of the people that are angry at the doctors went in and had that conversation with their doctor? Imagine how easy we could make it for the children if every parent had that conversation with their children, with their teacher, and said, look, we're going to stand up and support this. We do not want you following the government guidelines and doing this, and we're behind you. But we can't just leave these sacrificial lambs to do it all for us in whatever aspect of the life it is. How about we all club together and say, well, how can we stop this together? How can we all club together? Because it is much easier for people to stand up if they know they've got someone backing them. But how often do we back those people? How often have people stood up to and supported him and told their MPs, this is what we want. We want people that are prepared to raise these difficult comments, and we're going to support them. But every one of us that hasn't written to our MP and spoken up in support of the people that are putting their necks on the line, it comes back to what you say. You're either moving yourself and the world forward, or you're moving it backward. We can't all do it all, but we can all club together and sort of say, well, you write to the MP, I'll research this, I'll go and speak to some local farmers. How can we club resources? Because we haven't all got time to do it all. If someone's got a family and both parents are working, I sympathize. It's really hard work. I've been there. It's really, really. So, okay, if we want it to change, what can we do? And unfortunately, human nature, we often don't change unless we're forced to. And this is what we're seeing. At what stage do we need it to happen to us before we decide to say no more?
Yeah, we're very resistant to change unless something is done for, completely done for us. But sometimes also we can be resistant to change even if things are done for us too, which is, even if it's for our, for our best, beneficial for us. I don't know. It's just, we have this thing here recently. I think it's finished now, but for a week, Monday, a few days ago to Monday, the previous Monday, where a lot of people had posted on their social media, use cash for this next week, or everywhere. I was like, that's great, but why don't we just do it all the time? Why for a week? What's the point? That's not going to achieve anything. Really, in the scheme of things, it's not going to do shit. We need to be doing it cash all the time.
I agree. And that's something we can all change. We can all change that. We can all make a difference. And people are, it's really weird. I don't go into the town centre much, but I went in last week, and each time I go into this one little town near us and I park, I end up having the best conversation at the parking meter with completely random strangers. And one of them was this older gentleman who went up to the cash machine, and the cash machine in the car park said card only, or you had to do it on your own. It wasn't accepting cash. So immediately he said, and I didn't even have one of my T-shirts on, I was in a normal paint. So there's no way you can know. And he was like, this is a deliberate agenda to stop us using cash and blah, blah, blah. And he's completely right. And then the following week, I went into the same car park next to another elderly gentleman. And he said, did you know they were going to turn this car park into housing? And this is all linked to the 15-minute cities, because if they stop the town centres, car parks. And I was like, this is just amazing. I've not, you know, the people, they were both interestingly elderly gentlemen, not that old, but older than me. And I thought, you get it. You just completely can see it. But once we see it, we have to take action. We have to not go and spend anywhere when we're paying for cash. We have to stand up against it, because if we're waiting for someone else to do it, we're buggered.
Right. Yeah. There's a cafe here near my gym that I really wanted to try out, but it said card payment only. I thought, well, I'm not going to go there, am I? And I'm sure it's just an independent cafe. It's not a chain, or it's not owned by BlackRock and Vanguard, I'm sure, but it's the principle of the matter. Like, why won't they accept cash? It's still legal tender. And I caught the bus a couple of months ago, and I got on the bus and I only had cash because my multi-rider didn't have any credit on it. And I said to the guy, I want to get this ticket, and he goes, yeah, it's going to be this much. So I had like $20. And then I had a couple of coins, but I had $20, and I gave him the 20, and he goes, oh, I don't give change. And I was like, what do you mean you don't give change? And he goes, we don't give change anymore. And I said, okay, well, what if I don't pay? And he goes, well, you don't have to pay, but if you get caught, then you have to pay the fine. The thing on the bus, they never catch you because he's the only person. But I actually had enough coins to pay for it anyway, and forego like 30 cents worth of change. But I was like, obviously, I said, why? And he goes, oh, the government wants you to use your multi-ride. I was like, yeah, I know why. I know why. And it's just crazy how that,
isn't it? It is convenient. I mean, I've run trade stalls before and everything, and you know, having your cash float and then getting someone to look after it whilst you go to the loo, and you know that convenience kills. I'm sorry, it does in any area of your life. If we get that from our mindset, convenience is never normally. I mean, please correct me if people can think of something that I'm missing, but I can't think of a single example where convenience is in our best interest.
Yeah. I lived with a girl who said, we were talking about food and stuff, and this was a long, long time ago, and she goes, well, you pay for convenience. So yeah, it's true, but on the flip side, you really pay for convenience. You know what I mean? Like, you're paying in so many ways just for, you know, in this case, you're really going to pay for it. If you keep using your card, you will pay for convenience in ways that you couldn't even imagine, and that you wish you hadn't.
Hindsight is such a wonderful thing. You know, I mean, of course it's enticing. And, you know, this is where I just keep having to remind myself and, you know, pass it forward to others. None of this is about blaming ourselves for things we've done in the past. You know, of course, we're enticed by the easy options, you know, but once that light bulb moment goes off, question it. You know, what are the downsides? What are the long-term costs of me making this decision there? And that's part of growing up. Part of growing up is getting away from that instant satisfaction and looking at the longer term consequences of your decisions. And, you know, understanding now, if anyone's watching this, you're the type of person that understands a lot more than a lot of people in society, and you cannot separate the actions and the choices you're making from the world we're creating for all of us. And that, you know, that is a fact. And that's such a good point you made, that the long-term cost, yes, we say convenient cost, you'll pay a bit more to have something delivered to your door, but at what cost? At what cost to all of this? And I suppose, you know, that's my parting words, is at what cost is the way we're communicating with others preventing us and everyone moving forward? You know, is my communication style shutting down learning or opening it up? Open question.
Yeah, and I think a good way to communicate with somebody else is, rather than make statements at at them, because that's what we tend to do, is ask them questions, you know, phrase it in a question so it gets them to think, it lowers their guard because you're asking them a question. Like, for instance, I was having a conversation with somebody a few days ago, and we were talking about cataracts, and they were like, oh, well, you know, as you get older, you get cataracts, and I was like, yeah, okay, maybe you'll get them at some point. I was like, well, you know what else causes cataracts? LED lights. And they're like, well, yeah, if you look at them all the time. And then he goes, oh, yeah, but they're really energy efficient. And I felt like, I didn't say this, but I felt like saying, well, what would you rather do? Would you rather pay for the electricity or pay for a cataract surgery? Because that's going to be your option, you know, ultimately. And I think rather than blanket, you know, making a blanket statement or just categorically saying, well, you can either do that or that, ask the question, like, would you rather this or this? And that opens up more of a conversation, you know.
And also look at all the electricity they're going to be using in the operating theatre to keep you alive whilst they operate on your cataracts. I mean, I know we can go too far with it, but it's such a good point. Well, and I am so grateful when people point this out to me. I think a lot all the time. I'm trying to move out of thinking into feeling sort of more all the time. But we can't come up with all this stuff ourselves. We need our friends and other people to point these things out. I love it when I have that aha moment. Oh my God, I hadn't thought of it like that. Oh my goodness, you know. And it's always okay. What if you know, what if this, what is that? It's really fascinating, and stopping this black and white thinking is really important. You know, it's like the oxalates. Come back to the oxalates. Well, the oxalates might be a problem if you're really overdoing it, but you know, I give my guinea pigs and rabbits spinach and plants with oxalates in all the time, and touch wood, I've never had a problem. But because the environment that mine are kept in might be very different to someone else that's feeding them a very highly processed cook and just giving them those. And, you know, some bodies can cope with things better than others. And, you know, when your microbiome's really challenged, there's lots of things that your body can't process properly. So it's never this is the answer is what I'm learning. You know, there's always loads of things, and just questioning it, being aware, and then monitoring how these things are working out for you. But in some things, like the atrocities, like the child trafficking, like the animal abuse and things like this, then you know, it's another interesting discussion. But you know, that we have to start doing things differently. We have to start being prepared to have those those difficult decisions, and just bring it into the awareness, And, you know, yes, people might not appreciate it, but then what is the long-term cost, as you've just said, of going for the easy option? Can be pretty devastating at times.
Yeah. And just to add to the cash thing, isn't it nice just opening your wallet and have cash rather than just, I mean, if I don't have any cash, like if I just use card, you never have any cash. Like, isn't that, it sends a message to your subconscious that you never have any cash. Like,
absolutely.
And so you should, you know, if you're going to be spending the money anyway, and you've got the money in your account to go to buy food or whatever it is you're buying, why not just take the cash out and have it there, so you can, every time you open your wallet, you've got cash in your wallet. Like, it's a much better message to send to your subconscious.
Absolutely.
In any case.
Oh, that's such a good point. And it's just so beautiful. It's like little pieces, our £1 coins are like pieces of gold. I must just tell you this. I went into a local supermarket. I met someone yesterday, and I went into a local supermarket to pick up some things. I hadn't been into that supermarket for probably 2 or 3 months. They've introduced self-service tills that have got cameras up there. So you cannot pay for your stuff without the camera recording to you. And it was completely full. And then next time I'm going to wear a disguise, but I didn't know. I went in there and I was so shocked. It was only when I sort of put my shopping basket down and saw this in front of me, I was like, what the hell? So I spent the whole time going, you know, to this. And this woman, the poor lady serving, was looking at me, obviously thought I needed locking up. But I was so cross. I was like, how effing dare you be taking my picture whilst I'm buying my groceries, you absolute dickhead. So I'm not going in there again. There's no way I'm going in there again. I was like,
we have the same thing.
Could
in
not
some
believe
places.
it. Yeah. So
Yeah.
let's all go in disguises. I'm definitely going in a disguise next time. I'm going to get some weird outfit and wear it, because I just like, this is just ridiculous, absolutely disgusting. I mean, invasion of privacy. And I did used to be one of the people that said, well, I'm pleased as a lone female walking home late at night, they've got street cameras. But again, this is why I really don't think you can lump everything together. There's no way cameras in a supermarket are for safety. There's no way.
No.
Not protecting some vulnerable person walking home late at night. You know, if you've got a deserted train platform, I'm actually really pleased there's security cameras on there, because that's a high risk situation. But going in and buying your groceries in a supermarket, what can their possible justification be?
Yeah, I don't know. We have a big shopping complex not far from here, and only in the last maybe 6 months or so did they remove all the ticket parking, the pay machines.
Yeah.
But they had a certain number of hours free anyway, but they removed them all. And now they just have this, so you don't like insert the ticket into the machine as you leave. It just scans your number plate as you go in and as you leave. And if you stay for longer, then you pay with your card as you leave if you need to exit the supermarket, if you've been there for like more than 3 hours. And I was just looking at that and I was like, oh, this is very much like, it's got NWO written all over it. You know, it's like it's not so much the cash factor. It's more so the fact that they're now reading your number plate, and so if you have a bad social credit system, then you may not even be allowed into the car park at some point. Yeah. If you've gone over your carbon footprint, credits or whatever. And there was another car park in a different suburb where you enter your number plate to get a ticket. I was like, okay, that's interesting. But it's hard not to play devil's advocate, because what's the point?
Yeah.
What really is the point of having that function when you go and buy a thing? Like, you could argue that, then they'll probably say this, okay, if you go over time, then they can fine you, and they won't need to, they won't need to really send a person out there, which is probably what they do. But another part of me thinks, well, okay, if I'm outside my 15-minute city and I go to this cut, and they didn't have 15-minute cities back. This wasn't a thing, but I knew this is where they were going. And if I go to a car park in another suburb and it's outside the 15 minutes, I wouldn't be allowed to park there anyway, will I?
Yeah. Do you know, I think this comes back. We're going to have to do another one, David, about the whole thing. It's not the technology itself, it's the intent behind it. Because say on a toll road and they've got cameras that automatically number plate recognition. Now, if your child's been abducted, that system could save your child, because it could track, particularly if someone's seen them get into a certain car, it could track them and save someone's life. But it can also be used for evil. And you've just really made me think that this is the thing. When you look at these, that comes to the confirmation bias, you can really easily come up with really good reasons for why these could be really beneficial to not just humanity, but all creatures great and small. But you can equally see how they could be abused for nefarious means. And I think this is what makes life so complex, is it's not so much the actual thing itself, but the intent behind it. Technology can be, certainly not everyone. I do not believe for 1 minute, because I know loads of people that work there, that everyone who works for pharmaceutical companies are nefarious. I know that's not true. I know genuinely loads of people go into that thinking they're saving lives, and that's their intent behind their lifelong work that they do. And then there's some people that do bad things with that knowledge, and therein lies the problem. So we just need to be aware of where it's being corrupted and stand up against it. And it's not easy, is it? I think we're going to much to talk about. Let us know what you think in the comments. What are different perspectives? How can we change this communication style? What can we do about it? Please share your solutions in the comments. That's what I'd love to see. I don't know about you, David, but ideas for how can we do things better?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and then we can do like a follow-up video and talk about some of the responses people have given.
Yeah, I think that's really
as
good.
part of that.
Let us know. We'll keep an eye on the responses, and then we'll arrange up a follow-up. So if you've got other questions, if you've got points of view, if you've got good suggestions, please share them, because it's so important. Thanks, David. Anything final before we finish off?
I don't know. There's a lot going on in my mind, but I think that I just think raising your vibration is so key at this point in time. And you'll see the flow-on effect as you raise yours. Other people will also raise theirs, and that's what we need. I mean, if everybody had a high vibration during all the lockdown and the BS that happened 3 years ago, we would be in a very different place, wouldn't we? So.
Completely. 100% agree with that. Let us know what you're doing to raise your vibrations, and we'll cover that next time. Thanks, David. It's so lovely to see you. I don't know what you've done to our weather. It's just started pouring as rain and gone black as anything. Someone doesn't like what we're talking about. It's just gone really dark. It's really weird. But thank you, everyone that's watching. We really appreciate you. And let's see what we can all come up with together. Take care. Bye, David.
Cheers, Kath.
Thank you so much for taking the time to listen. And if you feel inspired, please do share with your friends and family. My goal is to inspire as many people as I can to live their best lives, to stay curious, and to raise their consciousness and that of the collective. So to do this, I need to reach as many people as possible, and this needs your help. If you feel drawn, would you be willing to share your favourite episode with 5 different people? This helps us spread the word and also helps me encourage some exciting new guests to take part in this podcast. If you feel drawn to do that, I will be very, very grateful. All the links and discount codes where applicable for all the products that I support are on my 2 websites, catherineedwards.life and catherineedwardsacademy.com. All of the products are personally tried and tested by me, my family, and my clients. And finally, please do press the follow or subscribe button, depending which platform you're listening on. And above all, stay curious and stay free.